Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we actually have to talk about Taiwan, because Taiwan is about to damage Russia and Belarus's future severely. Now, here's what's going on. This is actually coming from Tom's Hardware, who had a really interesting write-up on this one, and quite frankly, I think this is going to damage Russia for quite some time. Here's what's going on. From now on, Russia and Belarus, rather their entities, can only buy CPUs, central processing units, operating at below 25 megahertz and offering performance of only up to 5 gigaflops from Taiwanese companies. This essentially excludes all modern technology, including things like microcontrollers for more or less every sophisticated device out there. Now, due to restrictions imposed on exports to Russia by the United States, the UK, and the EU, leading Taiwanese companies were among the first to actually cease working with Russia after the country started this basically full-scale war against Ukraine in late February. This week, though, Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs, or MOEA, formally published its list of high-tech products that are now banned from exportation to Russia and Belarus, which prevents all kinds of Taiwanese-produced high-tech devices, as well as tools used to make these chips, whether or not they use the technologies originating from places like the US, UK, or EU, which are already covered by these restrictions. They're basically covering all of these plus tools that could be exported due to, obviously, Russia's invasion. Now, items banned from exportation to Russia and Belarus are pursuant to what is known as Category 3 to Category 9 of what is known as the Wassenaar Agreement, which covers electronics, computers, telecommunications, sensors, lasers, navigation equipment, maritime technology, navigations, avionics, jet engines, and a number of other categories. Since the arrangement was adopted by 42 states in the mid-1990s, the restrictions may seem a bit archaic when it comes to computers and electronics, but this actually makes them even more severe for Russia and Belarus. There you go. Now, starting basically today, I believe it was today, Russian entities cannot buy chips that meet one of the following conditions from Taiwanese companies, according to Taiwan's publication Digitimes, and I'm going to go through this very briefly. We're not going to get technical here, but we kind of are. First, they can only have performances up to 5 gigaflops. Now, to put that into context, Sony's PlayStation 2, released around 2000, had a peak performance of 6.2 gigaflops, operating, as I mentioned, at 20 megahertz or higher, has an ALU wider than 32 bits. Obviously, we're way beyond that now. It has an internal interconnection with data transfer rate of about 2.5 megabits or over, which, quite frankly, I mean, that makes snails look fast. It has more than 144 pins, again, way beyond that, and basic gate propagation delay times of less than 0.4 nanoseconds, which, quite frankly, is like driving a Yugo in the fast lane. Now, for context, in 1993, my dad brought home a computer that was a total Ferrari at the time compared to my friend Vince's computer. Vince, you know who you are. That computer that my dad brought home had a 33 megahertz Intel processor in it, and that thing was amazing. So basically, Russia and Belarus, given that they are capped at where they are capped at 25 megahertz, will be able to play basically a mean game of the original X-Wing back from like 1992 or 93, and that's about it. Now, in addition to being able, or I should say unable to buy chips from Taiwanese companies, Russian entities will also not be able to get any chip production equipment from Taiwan, which includes things like scanners, electron microscopes, and other types of semiconductor tools that can be used to make chips and processors locally or perform reverse engineering, something obviously that Russia was usually pinning their hopes on because that's what the Russians do. So basically, this kills their entire tech sector. Taiwan is something like 90% of all chip production. You add South Korea into that mix, and South Korea is on board with this, you are looking at 98% of all chip production in the world, basically saying, Russia, you can't buy a thing. That is absolutely insane. So anything that has a processor in it over 25 megahertz that could possibly be sold to Russia, they're going to have to buy on the black market. They're going to have to get through countries that, let's say, would be friendly to selling them through third parties, obviously for huge markups. This is going to slow down Russia's tech industry to 1990 level, and that is absolutely insane. You want to cut off and crush a country, especially in the age of the internet and flowing technology? My God, 25 megahertz. I think this Garmin watch, has a lot more power than that. So that is absolutely crazy. That is interesting news. But talk about crippling future generations of Russia. As long as these sanctions stay up, new technology will not be flowing into Russia at any time soon. talk about just this huge disadvantage to everything from military and weapon design to simply having an infrastructure that can run on computers to allow populations to communicate with each other. That's a huge problem. Now, obviously, there are plenty of computers in technology and technology in Russia right now that is vastly more superior to that. But like all technology, technology ages. If you don't know what Moore's law is, it basically means that we're going to double our capacity in semiconductors or processors every 18 months or so. And quite frankly, we've been beating Moore's law. So if this goes into effect for a year or two and Russia's not able to basically get a steady stream of new technology, new computers, they're going to fall farther and farther behind. And as software continues to develop and require more system resources, they won't be able to gain access to that as well, even if it's innocuous, because it simply won't run on older technology or run that efficiently. So this is obviously a huge problem for the Russian society, but quite frankly, you did it to yourself. Same with Belarus. So I find this to be really interesting. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but this is probably, I would say, close to a nuclear launch against Russia in terms of technology. Not that I don't want to talk about nukes or World War III, but this is a huge, huge dent. Imagine being here in the United States and saying, this is the last iPhone we'll get for a decade, and no matter what happens, this is all we've got. That is essentially what we're talking about, and the only iPhone we could get was a BlackBerry 1.0. It's absolutely nuts. So this is interesting news. I think this is positive news. I'm hoping that this puts more pressure, even more pressure on Russia and kind of makes them change course. We'll see what happens. It's been a wild card for the last 98, 99 days of this war. So we'll see. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.